Okay, so I spent the last video talking about, I was thinking about the organization, like what video should come first and what video should come second. But so the video that we talked about last time was kind of introducing array lists and how they might work and why they are a good feature to have. And I thought, I don't want to, like the video is already pretty long, I wouldn't want to make it any longer. But I think it's a really important thing to talk about is how, like, why are the chapters in this order, the way that they are? Why do we do strings, and then we do objects and classes, and then we're talking about array lists? Seems like we're talking about one thing, and then the other, and then another. But actually, these are all meant to kind of go together. So we talked about strings to begin with because strings are something that we're familiar with using already. And they're also kind of like a weird little bit of a class because they have some stuff with them, right? We said to define a class, if we recall, from chapter 16, we said a class is basically something that has, I'll close this, class has two things. It has functions and it stores data. So, you know, like a variable, like an integer or something, it only doesn't have a function, it just stores data. But a class, something like a string, you can store data in it, you can store names in it, but then you can also run functions, or maybe better to say, in our case, I mean, functions is kind of a general term. In Java specifically, they're called methods. So that's what a class is. It combines those two things, functions and data. So a string is like a good introduction to that because it's something you're familiar with. It has methods already, and it stores data. Great. So now we come down to, then we talked about objects and classes in chapter 16, and now in chapter 17 we're coming to an array list. An array list is a full-fledged class. It stores data, right, in the form of numbers, or I mean not numbers. It stores like strings, numbers, objects. It all has to be the same type, but it can store a wide range of data. And then also there's a lot of functions that are built into it. And I'll show you a couple examples of both those things just to be clear in Replit. But so strings are kind of like, it's a weird kind of class that kind of works in both worlds. An array list is a pure class, and it's something that's already built for us that we can use to, store data and manipulate data and rearrange it and do all this stuff. As we move forward, and let me see if I can just pull up my chapter 6, I think we're going to start to, maybe around in unit number 7, we're going to start to design our own classes. Right now what we're doing is we're taking a class that already exists and we're using it. Later on we'll work on how we can define our own classes, and that's when we're really finally doing the full Java level. So far we've done kind of basic stuff. As we move forward, we're kind of building up, and classes is pretty far up there in terms of like what we need to do, what we need to know how to do. So let me just show you really quickly the array list class. So I'm doing this thing. This is similar to one I think I'm going to do in the next video. Array list, nums, all this stuff. Now this thing's not going to work if I try and run this. I'm getting an error. So what is this talking about? What is this talking about? And the problem is that, yeah, can't find the symbol. Can't find the symbol array list. And the reason that is because I didn't import it. So just to be clear, this is always something, array list, just like scanners, is not something that comes natural or like native to Java. We need to import it, and now we should be able to run. I thought I did this as integer before. That is a capital integer. That should work. And now we're going to add all these numbers. So in this way, they said there's two parts to a class. We store data and we have functions to it. So, I mean, this is actually kind of doing two things at once. This is adding data to it, so we are storing data. But actually, the add method by itself is a bit of a method. But to be clear, there's a bunch of other ones in here that we could do. We could do things like nums.length, print that out. Right, and that's going to, oh, actually I think not length is for a regular array. Let me try that. Num size, so we get the size of 5. We could actually open up, let's see if this, so I'm going to actually pop over to my TMC because I think this is going to help us see a few more of the methods that are there. So if we go into here, and so like Replit's good for me because I can, well, I mean, it's good for you too for like writing in some quick programs and you don't have to make a whole new project. It's good for me because I can like share the work with you and you can like make a copy and edit it directly. But this is really, but one thing that Replit doesn't do good is it doesn't do as well is having methods, like showing all the operations, auto-completing for you, and showing all the possible options for this nums method. So nums is an array list, and all of these things in here are methods that work with it. So there's a ton of stuff in here. We can check the size like we already did. We can remove objects, replace all. And there's a ton of stuff in here that we really won't use because there's just a ton of stuff in here. But things like index of, we'll definitely use that. It's going to basically find the location of something and then return this location if it's there, or return -1 if it's not there. We do something like equals, or no, I was going to say contains. See if an object is in there. It's a little bit different than the index of, because it's just going to return either true or false. If it's there, yes. If it's not there, false. So there's a lot of things in here: clear, clone, copy, all these kind of methods that we can use. So we're storing data. I think it's pretty clear how we're storing data. And this is not showing. Yeah, I mean, we're storing data in here, right? But then we also have all these different functions that we can use. So an array list is an example of a pre-built class that we can use. When we move forward and next unit or the unit after, we'll be designing our own classes, which is really, again, going to take our methods, took us up one level. I think maybe starting from primitives, and then we do like for loops or while loops. We do conditionals, that moves us up a level. We start doing methods, that moves us up a level. We start doing classes, that moves us up a level. And we're like just getting higher and higher in our sophistication. And classes is really where it's at.